Behind the Himalaya lies my country, Tibet. It doesn't seem far, and yet, for the past 5 decades, most of the Tibetans in exile can only dream someday they would leap these great mountains to be back in their own country. Dharamsala, a temporary residence of His Holiness the 14th Dalai Lama, as well as more than 10,000 Tibetan refugees who have taken refuge until Tibet gets its independence. Here, Tibetan people can openly practice non-violent Tibetan religion, and Tibetan children can learn modern education. What lies behind the majestic mountain is a sad story that most people around the world still unaware of its past, present, and the dwindling future of the Tibetan people. During the Cultural Revolution in Tibet, Mao Zedong viewed it as the cleansing of old, stagnant society. China has always described Tibetans as an uneducated, barbaric society, a society that needed change and re-education, resulting in a massive imprisonment of Tibetans, ranging from government officials, monks, nuns, scholars, school teachers, and regular people. Some were accused of having imperialistic ideas, and some too stagnant for modern society. They were tortured in front of their families and publicly executed. In 1964, Panchen Lama, the second highest ranking Lama of Tibet, was called upon the China's General Assembly and was denounced, accused of being a separatist. He was condemned without trial as an enemy of the people. He was sentenced to 14 years in prison with harsh labor. On January 24, 1989, Panchen Lama publicly stated, "Chinese rule in Tibet had brought more destruction than benefit to the Tibetan people." On January 28, 1989, Panchen Lama died. Many believed he was poisoned to death. After 5 decades, with constant influx of Chinese into Tibet, Mao Zedong's dream to assimilate Tibet into People's Republic of China finally seemed to have paid off. Today, Lhasa looks more like a Chinese city. There are more Chinese in Tibet than Tibetans. Chinese government proudly claims that they will spend $1 billion in Tibet's growing economic infrastructure. This economic prosperity comes with a price for the Tibetans in Tibet, crippling Tibetans socially and economically. Tibetans in Tibet struggle daily, facing extreme poverty. Every day, Tibetans live under the cloud of fear and suspicion. It has much become a part of life. The regional security personnel constantly interrogate Tibetans for no reason. Tibetans in the autonomous region are being pushed to the outskirts of all major cities to make way for new Chinese immigrants. Today, Tibetans in Tibet earn 40% less than the Chinese immigrants. As the Tibetans struggle, often Tibetans can't afford to send their children to school. Therefore, the education and literacy level are at the lowest, thus forcing young generations of Tibet into becoming unproductive citizens. Such environment created by Chinese government has led Tibetans into drinking and gambling, some at a very young age. A simple tactic that would have a devastating effect on future Tibet. In a desperate attempt by the Tibetans in Tibet to save their culture and youth, each year thousands of Tibetans escape out of Tibet, crossing the dangerous path into Nepal. Among the refugees, many are children whose parents risk their lives, hoping their children could get better education, and others simply wanting to seek an audience with His Holiness the 14th Dalai Lama. Nagpa serves as the main trading route between the Tibetans and the Sherpa traders of Kumbum. At almost 19,000 feet, about 20 kilometers west of Mount Everest. Tibetan refugees use these glacier paths during the dead cold winter when fewer Chinese soldiers are on guard. Hiding under the cover of darkness, in the freezing cold weather, they walk every night on foot. During good weather, it takes 2 to 3 weeks to cross. During bad weather, it takes more than 2 months. When the temperature drops below freezing, it is even harder, especially for the children. On average, are less than 14 years of age, usually suffer from severe frostbite. Even if the Tibetans could resist the cold weather, they are a vivid, moving targets for armed Chinese border soldiers. Walking for weeks, almost during the night, and surviving on just hot water, crossing into Nepal does not come cheap. Once the Tibetan refugees manage to get into Nepal, the danger is still not over. Nepalese border soldiers constantly harass Tibetan refugees. Detained refugees are demanded to pay nearly $2,000. Most can't afford to pay, are deported back to the Chinese authorities. Deported Tibetans are usually detained in Chinese prison and tortured. Chinese government has openly announced that people who escape Tibet are loyalists of Dalai separatists. They are criminals and should be dealt as criminals. Tibetan refugees are being killed while crossing the border, but the reports of Tibetans being killed never make it into any corner of the world's newspaper, usually overshadowed by the news of powerful countries like United States of America giving economic sanctions to China. Despite of the fact that there has been a constant violation of human rights in Tibet, the International Olympic Committee gave China the prestigious honor to host the year 2008 Olympics. A symbol of peace, a symbol of equality, a symbol of respect and love among fellow human beings, has become a mockery in itself. China has been covering everything with a deceptive cloud of dust to the Western world, fooling everyone. So far it seems China is winning the game. On September 30th, 2006, the world woke up when the shots rang over Nagpa. This time the world has seen the very fact that the Tibetans have been telling for the past 3 decades. International mountaineers who were at the advanced base camp west of Mount Everest were the key eyewitnesses to this brutal incident. According to Lobsang Chönden, one of the survivors of Nagpa incident, on that day, a group of 75 Tibetan refugees were crossing Nagpa when the Chinese border soldiers opened fire. 17-year-old Kesang Namzo died on the spot, and 13-year-old boy was shot. Few were injured. During the chaos, some of the European mountaineers tried to help the children. But within few minutes, the base camp was crawling with Chinese border soldiers. Children were captured and taken away.
China ship! Stop killing! In Tibet!
Outraged by the incident, Tibetan communities and Tibet support groups around the world protested in every continent, shaming China, condemning the brutal act by the Chinese soldiers, killing unarmed, defenseless Tibetan refugees, mostly children.
We are having a demonstration here in front of the Chinese consulate in Vancouver, British Columbia, Canada. And we have Tibetans from Oregon, Seattle, and Vancouver and Victoria, and the support groups joined here together protesting the killing of innocent Tibetans. It must be stopped right away.
We've seen all across North America and around the world is an outpouring, an outcry from Tibetans and their supporters in every city where there's a Chinese consulate or embassy, just shaming China and drawing attention to our governments about this atrocity and saying this needs to stop.
China, stop killing in Tibet! China, stop killing in Tibet! China, stop killing in Tibet!
The Chinese government does not recognize many of the rights that are enshrined in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. And for that, the Chinese government should be very ashamed.
Jamil ngogo singin de chela ya ngazo chi tanga tangni chi zoya ke yo marla tang ngogo che de wina ngogo la zoya da tinde ka ke yo marta je du sambalia chisi permitsu ge samdun te jamitsu ngoni duta maje ba do tisi do ani permitsu ge khandar jamil ngogo che de cham che tu mare samge.
I'm here because I have a lot of friends who made that same trip, and it hits very close to home. I'm also a teacher. I know there were a lot of children who were in that escape party and couldn't get through. All they wanted was an education and freedom. And so it hits very personally that children should be, killed and arrested simply for seeking an education. But I know there are many, many, many more who die making that same escape every year, and it's not recorded, it's not witnessed by outsiders. And the Tibetans who tell the tale when they escape, Tibetans who've seen it, they're not listened to, they're not responded to properly. So I think China needs to hear, it needs to keep hearing that we know what's going on, and we're going to keep screaming at them and keep demanding that they stop this action.
China! China! Human rights! Human rights! Human rights! Human rights! Stop the killings! Stop the killings!
As the international pressure mounted upon China, the Chinese government gave an unacceptable excuse, claiming that the shooting by the border soldiers were done in self-defense. During the news conference in Beijing, the Chinese Foreign Minister spokesman Liu Jinchao said, "I have seen the reports about this, but I have no knowledge of the specific situation. It was up to the China's border security forces to decide when to fire their guns. The duty and task of China's border troops is to safeguard the peace and security of China's border." As long as Chinese government does not fulfill the wishes and the demands of Tibetan people for an independent state, the struggle for freedom will forever continue for generations to come. Among the 41 survived refugees, one of the youngest is Namzol Hamo, age 7. Her parents had spent almost their entire life saving of $625 so that Namzol Hamo could have a better education and find her own identity as a Tibetan in a foreign land. As the souls of the 13-year-old boy and 17-year-old Kelsang still lie frozen on Nagpa, they are a haunting reminder and a glimpse of the brutal reality Tibetans face under the communist Chinese regime, which must and should never be forgotten.
They're shooting them like dogs. Yeah.